The engine was still ticking when I turned it off, and I just sat there in the driveway for a while, staring at the garage door. I do that sometimes after a long day. I just need a few minutes before I walk into the house and become someone's daughter again, someone's sister, someone's bank. That particular Thursday in early October, I had just gotten off an 11-hour shift. I'm a senior compliance officer at a mid-sized financial services firm in Charlotte. I'm 31 years old. I own my townhouse outright, paid it off 2 years ago, and I have not taken a vacation since 2022. Not because I can't afford one, because every time I get close to actually booking something, someone in my family needs something first. That Thursday, I was tired in the specific way you get tired when you have been holding everything together for so long that you have forgotten what it felt like not to. The kind of tired that sits behind your eyes. I had a protein bar for lunch. I had 47 unread emails and a performance review due by Friday morning. My phone buzzed as I sat in the driveway. It was my brother. "Hey, can you call me when you get a chance?" Nothing urgent. With my brother, nothing urgent has historically meant the transmission went out on his truck, or he needs a cosigner, or he and his wife had a fight and he wants me to mediate. I love him. I do. But nothing in my family is ever actually nothing urgent. I went inside, changed out of my work clothes, poured myself a glass of water, and called him back. He answered on the first ring. "So," he said, in that particular voice he uses when he's about to ask for something. "Mom and Dad's anniversary is coming up. The big one. 35 years. I knew this. I had already ordered them a gift, a weekend getaway to Asheville. Something modest but thoughtful, already paid for and printed and sitting in an envelope on my kitchen counter. "I know," I said. "I got them something." "Yeah, but see, that's the thing." He paused. I heard his wife say something in the background. "We were thinking of doing a dinner, like a real family. Make a big night of it." "Okay," I said slowly. "Aunt Denise found this place. It's called Hargrove and Sons, downtown. He cleared his throat, it's pretty upscale." I had heard of Hargrove and Sons. I had been there once for a work client dinner. The tasting menu alone was $220 a head. I had exactly zero memory of agreeing to this. "How many people are we talking?" I asked. "Just family," he said. "So, Mom, Dad, me and Cynthia, the kids, Aunt Denise and Uncle Pete, they're 3, Cousin Ricky and his girlfriend Grandma. That's like 16 people," I said. 17, he said. "Dad invited someone from his old job." I rubbed my eyes. "And who's covering this?" Another pause. Longer this time. "We figured we'd all chip in," he said, which in our family's language means, "We figured you would cover it and we would all chip in $100 each and feel very good about ourselves." "Send me the details," I said, because I was tired and it was easier than the alternative. I should have pushed back right then. I know that now, but I had been saying that to myself for 9 years, ever since I got my first real job out of college, and my parents sat me down and told me, with great warmth and sincerity, how proud they were of me, how I was the first one in the family to really make it, how they knew I would always take care of everyone. They didn't ask. They told me, like it was already decided, and I had let it be decided. That was on me. I knew that. The dinner was on a Saturday night in mid-October. I drove 40 minutes across town, which is what I do, because I am the one who drives to everyone. No one drives to me. The restaurant was exactly as I remembered it. Dark wood, low lighting, the kind of quiet that costs money. The hostess led me to a private dining room in the back that my aunt had apparently reserved. And when I walked in, I stopped in the doorway for a second and just looked. There were more than 17 people. I counted later. There were 23. My father had invited not one person from his old job, but 5. My aunt had brought her neighbor, who had apparently always wanted to try this place. My cousin's girlfriend had brought her sister, who had a newborn, and the newborn was asleep in a carrier on the sister's chest, and nobody had mentioned this would be happening. My mother saw me and waved from across the table like everything was perfectly normal. I sat down next to my sister-in-law. She leaned in and said, very quietly, "I want you to know I told him this was a bad idea." "Which part?" I whispered back. She looked at the ceiling. "All of it." The menus came out. The prefix was $240 a head now. They had updated it since my last visit. There was also a separate wine list that my uncle was already studying with the focus of a man who does not intend to pay for whatever he orders. Appetizers were brought to the table without anyone ordering them. That is a thing I noticed. The waitstaff just started bringing food because my aunt had apparently called ahead and arranged some kind of welcome spread, which is not a thing I knew about, and which, I was beginning to understand, I would be expected to absorb into the final bill. My father gave a toast. He talked about 35 years of marriage and the family they had built, and he looked around the table with genuine emotion, and I will say this, he meant it. Whatever else I can say about my father, he is not a cynical Simpson. He loves his family. He just also has never once in his life asked himself who was paying for the love. When he finished, he raised his glass toward me. Not toward the table. Toward me, specifically. And we are so blessed, he said, to have someone in this family who can make a night like this possible. There was applause. 23 people clapping, looking at me. I smiled. I have a very good smile for moments like that. Controlled. Warm, revealing nothing. Under the table, I was doing math. Dinner went the way these things go. The wine my uncle ordered was a $280 bottle, and then he ordered a second one. My cousin's appetizer was a $38 shrimp dish, and he ordered two. The children at the table, of whom there were 4, ate approximately $6 worth of food between them and destroyed the breadbasket. My father ordered the Wagyu. I know what Wagyu costs. I did not look at the menu when he ordered it. I looked at the candle in the center of the table and thought about my performance review. Around 9 o'clock, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I stopped at the host's stand and asked the maitre if I could speak to someone about the bill. A young man in a dark suit appeared. Very professional. The kind of person seen everything and is surprised by nothing. I want to pay for myself and my meal only, I told him. I'll do that separately, right now, before the check is brought to the table. He did not even blink. Absolutely. Let me pull up your order. I had the salmon. I had 1 glass of wine. I had a dessert that I did not finish because I was not hungry. I was just eating to have something to do with my hands. Total came to $212 with tax and gratuity. I tipped 30% because I was not about to take my frustration out on the server who had been impeccable all evening. I paid. I got a receipt. I put the receipt in my purse. Then I went back to the table and I sat down and I waited. The check came at 9:45. I watched it land in front of my father, which is where the waiter put it, presumably because he was at the head of the table. My father looked at it. Then he looked at my brother. My brother looked at my uncle. My uncle was refilling his wine. Then my father looked at me. "Sweetheart," he said. The table got very quiet. "I think you should probably take care of this." I looked at him. "I already took care of mine," I said. A pause. "What?" "I settled my bill at the host stand earlier, paid for myself, tipped on it." I kept my voice completely even. "I'm covered." The silence that followed was the specific kind of silence I have come to recognize as the moment before everything changes. My aunt was the first to speak. "Well, that's not really how this works. I'm happy to help everyone figure out how to split the remainder," I said. "If you divide it equally, it's probably around $400 a person before tip. The wine adds up." My uncle set down his glass. My cousin looked at the ceiling. My father's expression had shifted. The warmth was still there, but something else had come in alongside it. Something that looked, if I'm being honest, a little like betrayal. "You're going to sit there," he said, "and let your mother and me." I said. "I paid for my meal. I'm not responsible for everyone else's. This is a family dinner." "I know. And I love you both. And I gave you and Mom a weekend in Asheville that's already paid for and waiting on my counter." I paused. This restaurant was not something I agreed to. I wasn't consulted on the guest list. I wasn't asked about the wine. I just showed up. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, and I could see it cost him something to say it this way, in front of everyone, "Stop making this difficult. Just help us out here." I heard those words land. I have been hearing versions of those words my entire adult life. Don't make it complicated. Don't make us feel bad. Just be the one who handles it. I can't, I said. Simply. Without drama. I stood up. I said goodnight to my mother, who had not looked at me directly since the check arrived. I hugged her anyway. I shook my father's hand, which I never do, but it felt like the right gesture. Formal, clean, honest. I said goodnight to my brother. His wife squeezed my arm. I walked out. The night air outside the restaurant was cool and dry, that particular October sharpness that makes everything feel slightly more real than usual. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, and I noticed that my hands were completely steady. That surprised me. I had expected to be shaking. My phone started ringing before I got to my car. It was my aunt. I let it go to voicemail. Then my cousin called. Then my father. Then a number I didn't recognize, which I also ignored. I drove home on the interstate and I turned the radio off, and I just drove in the quiet. I am going to be honest with you about something. Part of me had expected to feel guilty by the time I hit the on-ramp. That's what usually happens. I do something that is, by any rational standard, completely reasonable, and then the guilt arrives like a delayed flight, not immediately, but inevitably. The voice that says, "You could have just paid. It would have been easier. It always costs less than the fight." But the guilt didn't come. What came instead was something quieter. Something I didn't have a word for yet. There were 14 voicemails by midnight. I listened to all of them the next morning, standing in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, because I believe in knowing exactly what you're dealing with. My aunt told me I had humiliated the family. My cousin said I had always thought I was better than everyone. My father said he was disappointed in me, which is the specific thing he says when he wants to make sure you understand that the disappointment is moral, not personal. My brother called twice. The first time to tell me that the bill had come to $9,400, which was more than anyone had expected, and that nobody had enough cash or credit to cover it, and the restaurant had held my mother's debit card as collateral while they figured it out. The second time, about an hour later, to tell me that they had managed to piece it together between everyone, but that I needed to understand what I had put them through. $9,400. I had expected maybe $6,000. The second wine bottle, the welcome spread my aunt had ordered, the 17 courses someone had apparently agreed to on behalf of the table, it had all added up faster than anyone had tracked. I sat with that number for a while, then I sat with the other number, $212, which was what I had paid. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank records. I do this periodically, just as a matter of habit. I'm in compliance. Tracking numbers is not a burden for me. It is just what I do. But this time I was looking for something specific because the voicemail from my cousin, the one where she called me selfish, had triggered something. A memory. Something my brother had mentioned offhandedly about 6 weeks earlier about having handled a thing with one of my old accounts. It took me 45 minutes to find it. One of my credit cards, a card I had opened years ago and barely used, a rewards card tied to an old email address I still technically owned, had a balance on it. A balance of $4,300. The charges stretched back 8 months. Gas stations, grocery stores, a charge from insurance payment, a charge from a veterinarian, which was interesting because I do not have a pet. I sat very still. Then I pulled up the associated email account, which I had not checked in over a year, and I found the statements. All of them. 8 months of statements, sent to an email address I never looked at, for a card I had essentially forgotten existed, being used by someone who was not me. I knew, before I even ran the logic, whose dog had been to the vet. My cousin has a golden retriever named something ridiculous. She had mentioned the dog at Thanksgiving. She had mentioned at that same Thanksgiving that vet bills were killing her. I closed the laptop. I made a second cup of coffee. I stood at my kitchen window and looked out at the backyard for a long time. Then I called my brother. He answered on the second ring, which told me he had been waiting. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to tell me the truth." A pause. "Okay, did you know about the credit card?" Longer pause. "Which one?" It wasn't a question. That's the thing I noticed. He said which one the way you say it when there is more than one answer, and you are buying time to figure out which one I had found. I hung up. I called the card issuer directly. I reported the fraudulent charges. I froze the card. Then I called my bank and did a full review of everything, every account, every card, every authorized user, every linked account. This took 2.5 hours. At the end of it, I had a clearer picture than I wanted to have. The credit card was the only account that had been actively used without my knowledge. But my brother had been listed as an authorized user on a savings account I had opened in my mid-20s, something I had done years ago for logistical reasons when I was helping my parents with some bills, and there had been 3 withdrawals from that account in the past 4 months. Small amounts. 300 here, 250 there, 400 once. The kind of amounts designed to stay under the radar. $1,150. I got a notebook. I wrote it all down, every charge, every date, every amount. I am very good at documentation. It is, again, my job. That afternoon I called an attorney, not a family friend. It's not someone who owed my uncle a favor, a real attorney, someone I had worked with in a professional capacity whose judgment I trusted. I explained the situation. She listened. She asked clarifying questions. At the end, she said, with the calm specificity that I have always found reassuring in professionals, "You have a case. Do you want to pursue it, or do you want to use it as leverage?" I thought about Father's hard face at the dinner table, the warmth in his eyes when he raised his toast toward me. The way he said, "Stop making this difficult," as if my entire existence had been a complication he was managing. "Leverage," I said, "for now." My mother called me 3 days after the dinner. Not to apologize. I want to be accurate here. I am not going to rewrite what happened to make it more satisfying, but to talk, which is what she does when she wants to understand something. She is a complicated person, my mother. She is not calculating the way my aunt is, not oblivious the way my father tends to be. She is somewhere in between, someone who sees more than she lets on, and who has spent 35 years making peace with things she probably shouldn't have made peace with. "I need to know that you're okay," she said. "I'm fine," I said. "You hurt your father." "I know." He was embarrassed. "I know that too." I paused. "Mom, do you know about the credit card?" Silence. "Which one?" she said. And I understood then that she had known, or suspected, and had made the choice people make when they decide that keeping the peace is more important than keeping the truth. "I filed a fraud report," I told her. "I'm working with an attorney. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what I know." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," she said. "For them, I should have told you." "You should have," I said. "And so should they." We talked for another hour. I am not going to characterize that conversation as reconciliation, because it wasn't. It was more like 2 people looking at the same object from different distances and trying to agree on what shape it is. We did not fully agree, but we were honest with each other in a way we had not been in a long time, and that felt like a beginning of something, even if I wasn't sure yet what. My brother and my cousin received formal letters from my attorney 6 days after the dinner. Not lawsuits? Not yet. Letters documenting the unauthorized charges, the fraudulent account access, the amounts, the dates. Letters that said, in the careful and specific language attorneys use, "We know. We have evidence. Here are your options." My brother called me immediately. "This is serious," he said, and he sounded genuinely rattled, which told me something about how cavalier he had been up until that moment. "Yes," I said. "You're really going to take us to court? Over this? Over the money you took from me without asking? Over the card that was used for 8 months without my knowledge?" I kept my voice flat. "I'm going to get my money back. How that happens is up to you." There was a very long silence. "I'm sorry," he said finally. It came out unsteady, like something he had been holding for a while and was relieved to put down. "I needed money and I told myself you wouldn't notice. I told myself it wasn't really." He stopped. "That's not an excuse." "No," I agreed. "It's not. We made an arrangement. It is written down. It is signed. My attorney has a copy, and so do I. The money will be repaid in monthly installments. If a payment is missed, the matter moves to the next stage." This is not cruelty, it is just structure, and structure is the only thing I have ever trusted to hold. My cousin took longer. She was defiant for about 2 weeks, and then the attorney's letter started to feel real to her, and she called me crying. I let her cry. I did not tell her it was okay, because it wasn't, but I told her I wasn't interested in destroying her life. I was interested in what was mine. She is also on a payment plan. Same terms, same consequences. My father and I have not had a direct conversation about the dinner since it happened. That is, I suspect, a conversation that will come, eventually, when enough time has passed that we can both look at it without flinching. He is not a bad man. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters. He is a man who never learned to ask for things, so he taught his family to simply take them, and he found a daughter who never learned to say no, so she taught him that taking was fine. We both have things to unlearn. I am willing to do that work. I am not willing to do it at a $9,000 restaurant while 23 people watch him toast my generosity. I still have the Asheville reservation on my counter. I thought about canceling it. I didn't. I think I'll give it to them eventually when things have settled. It was a good gift. It still is. What I have learned after 31 years of being the responsible one, the successful one, the one who handles it. Love is not a blank check. It is not an open tab. It is not an account you can draw from indefinitely because you were there at the beginning when it was opened. I am still the person I was. I still care about my family, still want good things for them, still pick up the phone when they call, within reason and with more scrutiny than before. But I am also the person who sat at a dinner table and did the math in real time and understood, finally, that the number on the check was never the real problem. The real problem was that for 9 years, I had let them believe that my limits did not exist. Now they know they do. And I have to say, sitting in my car in the driveway the week after, in the same quiet I always give myself before going inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I felt like the books were balanced.